And welcome back. 15 minutes to 10 a.m. Central African time. We're going to be joined now by Dr. Yvonne Ridley to speak to us about Prince Harry and his latest book, in which and he says he's responded to certain claims and the controversy around that book. So he says Afghanistan claims have been taken out of context. And to discuss this further, we're joined by Dr. Yvonne Ridley, who is a British veteran journalist. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Ridley. Welcome to the show. Great to speak to you again.
Walaikum salam, and thank you for inviting me onto your show.
So, Prince Harry, I can't help but be amused by what comes out from Prince Harry and his family. It's always something new. But now he's hit back at what he deems to be hurtful responses to his memoir and saying that he was particularly upset by the quote unquote lie that he had boasted that he killed 25 people in Afghanistan when serving as a military helicopter pilot. What is going on here?
Well, it depends whether you're in the for Harry camp or against Harry camp. And I must admit, I'm more than halfway through his book at the moment. And it's a very sad and tragic book. Here is a young man who is in a great deal of pain. And he's gone around all the media circuits giving interviews about why we should all buy his book. And I have to say, I went for the audio version because it's given in his own voice and it is fascinating to listen to. But as I say, it's very cringeworthy. It is like watching a car crash in slow motion. He says that claims that he was boasting when he wrote the book Spare about killing 25 Taliban fighters in Afghanistan. He says that those claims are a dangerous lie, that he wasn't exploiting the death of these soldiers. I think he was ill-advised to mention specifically the number of soldiers that he'd killed and referring to them as chess pieces. You know, just because an Afghan mum doesn't sit down with popcorn and watch Netflix or have a mobile smartphone in her hand, it doesn't mean that her pain is any less than anyone else's when it comes to grieving. And, you know, there are too many war widows and grieving mothers and sisters and aunts and uncles in Afghanistan, the graveyard of empire. So I think that Prince Harry was very ill-advised by those guiding him when he wrote Spare. Well, it was ghost written for him, wasn't it? So he's right, and it is a dangerous lie because you fall out with one person in Afghanistan. They have such large families. He's probably created 600 enemies overnight, from cousins and uncles and, you know, these huge families. And the death is ever present in Afghanistan. I was there earlier this year, and everywhere you go, there are graveyards of young men who've sacrificed their lives for the same piece of land, and very often in the name of the same God. It's, you know, it's a very raw time. The memories of the war are still very fresh. And so I would have said that he was ill-advised to even talk about this. I don't know of any soldier who's even talked specifically about numbers. It was very insensitive, although he does insist that his words were taken out of context, and this spin is endangering his family. Just by writing the book and putting himself in the spotlight, he is endangering his family. His family is a target. In fact, in the book, his first tour of duty in Afghanistan, by his own admission, was brought to a sudden end when the media found out that he was stationed in Helmand province, and suddenly he became a military target, a magnet for the Taliban, who quite naturally were wanting to get him in their gun sights.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, okay, so in the book, he sort of makes these claims, and he, as you said, he made this ill-advised decision to sort of mention the exact number of people that he was responsible for killing in some way or the other. But even as that was mentioned, he now has responded saying that, well, immediately after publishing the book, the response to the book and the criticism was that he was boasting about these murders. But he says these were taken out of context, and that he even said that this was a hurtful lie. What do you make of this?
Well, as I said at the beginning, it depends largely which camp you're in. You know, are you pro Harry, in which case you'll carry on with his words and say it's been taken out of context. But if you're anti Harry, you know, you will say he is exploiting the deaths of the Taliban soldiers, and he is exploiting the grief of the family. 400,000 copies of this memoir have already been bought, despite all the leaks in the media ahead of its official release. And he has given a wide ranging set of interviews, including this very celebrated, prestigious uh, show in America called The Late Show, hosted by a guy called Stephen Colbert, who, and it was there he said that any criticism was simply an attempt to undermine his work and his book. Um, the Taliban reference is a very minor detail as far as the publishers are concerned. But these are people's lives we are talking about. These are the sons of Afghan women. These are the husbands, the fathers. You know, it's still very raw, although the country celebrated this amazing victory over the US military. Um, we are still talking about people's lives and the memories, the sacred and precious memories of fathers and sons. So I do think it was insensitive of him to talk about going to war in terms of 25 lives. Unfortunately, war is about killing people. Prince Harry was a professional soldier. He knew when he signed up for the British Army that if it involved war, it would involve killing. That was part of his training. So I'm trying to give a balanced view here, but it is difficult and it was insensitive. And I would say he was badly advised to specifically talk about numbers.
Yes, of course. And I think, has he shown any regret, any remorse for any of his actions during his time in Afghanistan?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
My apologies for that. I think what I was just trying to understand is, has Prince Harry since come out and shown any remorse or regret for his actions during the war in Afghanistan?
Well, no, he's, as he was keen to point out, he is a professionally trained soldier. And he says he shows no remorse. In fact, he said writing the book had been a very cathartic experience and the most vulnerable he'd ever felt in his life. But he said that he'd emerged stronger. Um, he will always be viewed, I imagine, with great suspicion um, and resentment by the Taliban because, you know, the war is still fresh in people's minds. Tens of thousands, if not more, Afghans, innocent Afghans, paid the blood price for that war, which was begun by an invasion by a very angry George W. Bush, who was out for revenge from 9/11. And as we know, there were no Taliban fighters. And in fact, there were no Taliban on any of the planes that were hijacked and then used as missiles to attack the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. There were no Taliban hijackers. So it's a very raw and sensitive subject, and I am surprised that Prince Harry went into detail in his revelations. I imagine that there won't be one single British soldier who has emerged from that war without causing injury, hardship, or death to at least one family in Afghanistan, but that is the nature of war.
All right, I think we'll leave it at that. So, of course, this is the developing and unfolding story. Comes the book Spear, which he's just published, comes right on the heels of the Netflix documentary as well. So, much to discuss about this, but very little time. Thank you so much for your time.
I think just one thing, it's very important to point out that the Taliban do not have a history of taking the war beyond their borders. So all this talk in the tabloids that he is endangering the life of British soldiers is a bit of tabloid hysteria because the Taliban have got what they wanted, which was Afghanistan. They won't take the war beyond the borders of Afghanistan, and I don't think they will go off and target any soldiers. However, there may be a few idiots out there who support or perceive to support the Taliban or just hold anti-Western sentiment, who may think targeting a soldier would be a good thing to do, which obviously it wouldn't. But a very ill thought out paragraph in the book, which, as I say, is quite a tragic reading. It's, of a young man who's in a great deal of pain with his family that just happens to be the royal family in Britain.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Yvonne Ridley, a British veteran journalist, bringing us now to 1 minute before 10 o'clock.